Module number 3, we're going to talk about MX as a Unified Threat Management Device, UTM. So the agenda for this module, we will first cover how to use the firewalling rules that we have in MX, and then how we can actually block traffic based on the contents, like based on the specific categories rather than blocking specific application. And then we'll walk through how to utilize the port forwarding feature and traffic NATting, how it works, what are the applications for that. And then towards the end, we're going to cover the client VPN and the group policies and how to apply them on the MX. So I guess, it's really important to understand what are the features that we have in our boxes that you can utilize so you can get your network protected when you have an MX in the environment. First, MX is a stateful firewall. So anything by default coming from the WAN to the LAN, it will get blocked unless it's been originated from the LAN to the WAN. You can actually block traffic based on applications or based on categories. So you can utilize the content filtering feature that we have. So we can actually block traffic based on the category of this kind of like websites, if this traffic is destined to websites. We use Bright Cloud for that. It's best in class, so it's a cloud service that has all the websites that are in the public network or public internet, and basically classified that and put it in different categories. So we sync up with this cloud service. So whenever a new website gets added to the public internet, Bright Cloud will actually look into this website, categorize it, and classify it in a different category. We use SourceFire Snort for intrusion detection and prevention. So it's a feature that built in the MXs with the advanced license that you can utilize. Of course, we get all the latest signatures and updates from the Snort Cloud. You can actually use different group policies to be applied to different users based on either their authentication, like based on a username, and we'll see how we can do that with Active Directory. Or you can actually have a static group policy and get that applied to a specific group of people, either manually or to a VLAN, or as I mentioned, through an Active Directory. Every MX can actually terminate tunnels from endpoints like computers or phones or tablets. So you can use actually MX as your client VPN server. All what you need is either to get a public IP address on the WAN interface so people can access this public IP address directly, or of course you can get private IP address, but you will need to do some port forwarding on the upstream device, and we'll see how we can do that with the MXs that we have in the topology diagram. For anti-malware, we use Cisco Amp for that. Again, it's another cloud service. So we are always synced with the Amp Cloud. So whenever there's a new malware or new signature, we will get the update straight from Amp Cloud, get pushed to all the MXs or forced to the MXs. And we always synced with the Amp Cloud. So we have like a regular database refresh every hour. And as I mentioned, this section we will cover how to utilize the Active Directory or Radius server, and how we can actually push different policies to the MXs and apply this policy to the user once they get authenticated. I guess it's really important for all of us to understand how actually AMP works, because there is a new feature that we're working on, or a new service that basically going to be available soon on the MXs, which is the integration with ThreatGrid from AMP. So if you look into the MXs, they actually get all the signatures and all the updates from the Cisco Amp Cloud. Cisco Amp have two offerings there. Traditional Cisco Amp, where you actually get synced with all the known malware signatures that we know. And basically, whenever Cisco Amp detects any malware or any suspicious kind of like file from any of our customers around the globe, we will actually update the signature database and get all the MXs in the network up to date as well. The other product from Cisco Amp called ThreatGrid, which basically it's like a sandboxing in the cloud. So you can get a file that you believe it could be like a suspicious file. You upload it to the Cisco Amp through Grid Cloud, and then we will analyze this file in the cloud and check, if it's a suspicious file or it's a normal file. Of course, if it's suspicious and we've seen this file is actually a malware, then we will actually get this file blocked and have this in the database. Why is Cisco Amp actually best in the market? Because with Cisco Amp, you actually protected now with any kind of like new malware or new viruses that we become aware of, or the whole market or the whole industry become aware of. And it's a cloud service, so you're always synced, you're always up to date. You don't need to update any patches, or you don't need to worry about upgrading the firmware or so on. It's different database that we always have to get it updated all the time. But the other key thing here is with Cisco Amp, we do actually have a team looking after the database, and they basically analyze the file in a real time. So whenever we find a suspicious file, of course we have our kind of like automated tools to identify if this is a malware or not. If actually kind of like failed to detect if it's a malware or not, or these tools fail to do that, an engineer basically will look into this file and start to do like the testing by themselves. So when you buy the service, you actually buy all this package together. ThreatGrid is something that's going to be available with MXs soon. It's at the moment in beta phase, but I expect to have it really soon. Alright, so what I want to do now is try to use the topology and try to configure certain features that we talked about. We're going to cover the firewalling features, we're going to cover content filtering and all these things. So we'll kind of like hope to take the next 20 minutes or so to do a live lab to see how we can block traffic based on application or based on categories. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to focus on the Man United side. So I have a client here, which is client number B. It's connected to the MX and then connected to the internet. So what I want to do first is to start to block traffic based on application. So I will try to go and block specific application and see if this application is blocked from the host. All right. So let's go to our Man United site now, just that one. I want to quickly check if I do have my client connected to that one. Yep, okay, good. So that client has an IP, which is great. Okay, so if I go here, so as you can see, of course, we have one menu that only monitoring, which is giving you some useful reports, and another menu here for configuring the features that we have. So what I want to do, I want to kind of like give you an idea about how to set up some configuration, some rules. So first I can go and apply rules, of course, based on IP and port, layer 3, layer 4. So I can go here and say maybe TCP IP coming from any source, any port, going to specific destination. I want this to get blocked. If I know the IP address of the destination, I can do this rule. And of course I can add as many rules as I want, and I can just go and drag and drop these rules if I want to change the order. But for this demo, I would actually go here maybe and apply a layer 7 rule because it's easy to kind of like read. So I can go here and say maybe I want to block any peer-to-peer traffic. Or for this demo, I will just go, I will block maybe YouTube traffic. So I'll go here and say YouTube is part of video and music. Let's go and block YouTube. So what I'm doing here, this is basically a predefined access list, if you will, that we know the ports, the IPs that YouTube use. So that's why we actually added into this list. So if I go here and block YouTube, then anything, we kind of like added the list that we know that kind of like, oh, okay, these are the IPs that we need to block as a destination IPs, or the ports that being used by YouTube. All right, great. So I'm just having this rule now applied. As you can see from this rules, I can go and add more, like I can go here and say peer-to-peer traffic to be blocked, or any social media kind of like applications like Facebook and Instagram, I can block them as well. But let's focus on YouTube and see how that goes. So as I mentioned, I do have a client, which is client B, connected at the back of this MX. So I just want to first check if I do have access to the internet for testing YouTube. So here I have an IP address within the range, great. I can ping internet, which is great. Now let's go and try to access a couple of websites to confirm that we have access. So I would just go to Facebook maybe first to see if I have access to Facebook. Okay, looks good. Now I will try to access youtube.com and see if that will get blocked or we will be allowed. So it's taking a little bit longer, which means it actually getting blocked. Let's wait till it completely times out just to confirm that we have no access to YouTube. I'll try to access another website just to make sure these things are not cached. Okay, so here it tells me I cannot reach out to YouTube. Here it tells me, yep, I can access Google, great. So as you can see, there is a message that get kind of like populated here saying the website is blocked by your network operator. If you feel you've received this message in an error, please contact your network operator. So this is like the message that we give to the users that kind of like trying to access something that you actually blocked as part of the layer 7 rules. So as you can see, from here we can apply outbound rules, which mainly from traffic going from inbound to outbound, like coming from LAN to the WAN. If you actually have an MX, this MX in pass-through mode, so if you remember that we had one of the MXs actually sits in pass-through mode, which is Milan. So that one we configure to be pass-through mode. So if I just go here and confirm that this one is active, yep. Go here, addressing VLAN, just to confirm this one actually in pass-through, correct. So if I go here to the firewall rules, I found it a little bit different. So I can do inbound rules and outbound rules. So as I mentioned, when you put the MX in a pass-through mode, it acts as a bridge. It doesn't actually do much from a routing perspective. And from firewalling, you will need to define the firewall rules based on the direction of the traffic. So if the traffic coming from the WAN to the LAN, you can apply a rule here to block it. If the traffic going from the WAN to the from the LAN to the WAN, then you can apply here rule to block it. So this is the difference between having the MX in a pass-through mode and in a NAT mode. So this is one of the differences that we talked about before. All right, great. So what we've done, we've blocked traffic, YouTube traffic, which is okay. It looks straightforward. Now, how about I want to block categories? So YouTube is one site in a kind of like a video sites that we have globally. So how we can actually go and block the whole category, like video category or games category or whatever. So that's where the content filtering takes place. So I can go here and unblock a specific category. Let's say I want to block anything related to games. So I don't want anyone to access any games websites. There is an important thing here that I want to flag, which is the URL category list size. So there is like a top sites only, and there's like a full list. I think it's really important for all of us to understand what's the difference and how it operates. So as I mentioned, we work with Bright Cloud to get the list of websites and their categories. So if I actually put here the URL category list size to be top sites only, that actually means we will take the most popular websites from Bright Cloud and cache it in the MX. So whenever someone is trying to access it, we just block it and drop it. All right, I think the question here is, okay, what about the site that's not part of the list? For these sites, they will get allowed in this kind of like scenario. The other option is to put it in a full list mode. So the full list mode is basically will sync up with the cloud all the time. So whenever you have a new website, so first it will start to cache some of the top websites. And then for any new website that are not part of these cached ones that someone is trying to access, we will connect with the Bright Cloud and then asking them which category this site falls under. And then if it's under one of the ones that we block, then we will get this site blocked. If not, we will allow it. And the good thing here is we will cache this website. So whenever someone else trying to access, we don't need to do the same process to go to the Bright Cloud and try to get the information about this website. So it really depends. If you feel like you do have a lot of users that might be accessing unusual websites, then you can put it in a full list mode, and then there'll be a bit of delay when the first user trying to connect to a specific website, just to do this kind of like interaction between the MX and the Bright Cloud. But once that happens, this is like once-off thing. We will cache this website, so whenever another user or the same user trying to access the same website will get it blocked straight away. From there, if you have a specific websites within the category that you want to allow, you can actually here go and whitelist them or block a specific URLs. So the patterns actually, it's pretty standard. I can just go and say anything like this should be blocked, which means anything attached to the Google domain should be blocked from our perspective. So let's kind of like test this now. We have games. We said we want to block games. So let's go. To be honest, I can't remember any games websites. So I'll just go do some generic search. I'm not really a gamer, so let's see. Oh, addicting games. That sounds interesting one. Okay, great. Now I tried to open this website, which looks like it's part of the game's website or category, sorry, and then we blocked it. And because we use content filtering, we blocked this specific website. So you can see, we actually blocked some websites based on a layer 7 rule, which like a predefined access list that we have. And we also did the same thing, but based on categories, which basically any website falls under this category will get blocked. So if you look into the layer 7 rules here, you will find out that some websites or some applications are not listed there. And again, that's because we're probably not aware of the ports and IPs this website's been using. So of course, I'm pretty sure these are not the only video and music applications available on the internet. They must have hundreds and thousands more. So because, as I mentioned, we aware of the IPs and ports that have been used by this specific kind of like website. So that's why you can go and apply the firewall layer 7 rule. But if you want a more coverage and block traffic based on category, that's when you actually go and do the content filtering piece. Great. Now, let's talk about IPS and IDS, intrusion detection and prevention. We don't actually require much configuration there. It's a feature to be turned on, and then, as I mentioned, you let the MX, once you turn on the feature, you let the MX deal with the cloud and get the updates and start to block the suspicious traffic. So the first thing, if I want to actually go and block any malware, so I can go and turn on the advanced malware feature. And from there, you'll be able to see, I can have certain URLs to be whitelisted or certain files. This is something that you can do if there is a certain files actually not suspicious to you, but it could be suspicious to the rest of the world. Then you can go here and just say this website or this file shouldn't be blocked. And for intrusion detection prevention, as I mentioned, if you do have the MX in a pass-through mode, it works only in detection mode. If you do have the MX in a net mode, then you can actually put it either in prevention or detection. And the difference between the two here is basically with prevention, we will block the suspicious traffic and get you notified. While with detection, we will not block the suspicious traffic, but we will just notify you. So kind of like, hey, Mr. Network Operator, there is a virus here and we can see some suspicious traffic. Please go and look into these devices. So that's detection. Prevention would be like, we will block the traffic and then notify you, say, there was a suspicious traffic that we blocked and that person was the one responsible for it. And then if you actually look into the rule set here, so you find something called connectivity, balance, and security. It just basically, the main difference between the three is how long or how far we go back and look into the database. So you can actually go and see suspicious traffic that we are aware of for the last 2 years, or you look into the suspicious traffic that we are aware of just the last 3 months. So it's kind of like the database. And of course, the bigger the MXs you have, the better performance you will get when you have something like the security feature, because that will be able to handle the bigger database for the last 2 years. Anyway, I hit save here, and then once I do this, I'm actually now will be blocking any kind of like suspicious traffic and also any malware files that trying to be downloaded. And this is one of the things that I might struggle to demonstrate in this kind of like demo, because we don't have much traffic going through. So Security Center is basically the report that we will give you, where we consolidate all the data from the Cisco Amp and IPS IDS, and basically give you a holistic view of any threats that the MX managed to block, and it'll give you an idea about who were responsible for these threats, and it will give you an idea about the operating systems that they were using, and which signatures that we blocked, and where this traffic were actually originated from, or where these attacks were supposed to be originated from. So we don't have much traffic, of course, going through this lab environment, but I will try towards the end of the session to go to one of the live networks that we have to show to you how actually it looks in action. So what we've done so far, we've actually configured some firewall rules. We did content filtering. We turned on the Cisco Amp and Snort engine IPS IDS. I guess from here what we can do, we can start to talk a little bit about client VPN group policies. So maybe we'll start with client VPN. So if I actually go here to the client VPN settings, so I'm just trying to think which MX I should actually use as my having Man United here. Let's use that one. So I will need to configure client VPN on this MX. So it's by default disabled. So I go here and enable it, and now it asks me, okay, what subnet you want to give to the users. I'll say, okay, I will just maybe give 192.168.1. Let's choose something different than the example below. Let's say like this. Okay. Now it tells me which DNS server, DNS name server you want to give to the user. So I will leave it to Google. Secret is something that I will need to use. So when I try to log in from my device, I will need to put this in. So I will say here Meraki 1234. Authentication. Now authentication here, they actually asking if you should use the cloud or use something else. So if I go here and check maybe Radius or Active Directory, then I'll need to put in the details of my Radius server or Active Directory server, and then whenever the user try to authenticate, we will authenticate them against the server. Or the other option, you put the username and passwords in the dashboard and you start to authorize these people here. So as you can see, this is the admin, the only administrator in the network. At the moment, it's not authorized to be client VPN here. So what I need to do is to go to my user lists and basically allow this user to be authorized for the client VPN. Now it tells me, okay, do you want this to be expired? Like if you want to allow that person to only use the client VPN maybe for a week or for a month or for more, then you can actually specify this here, or you can leave it open. So basically it would just like forever. So really up to you. There's nothing really to limit you down here. Okay. So now I actually should be getting an email from Meraki saying now this network is asking you to be unauthorized for the client VPN. So I should be getting this email and I should confirm, yep, I'm happy to be authorized, so I can access this network later. So while I'm actually checking this, what we will do actually, I will try to get one of my phones and we'll show you in the screen how to create the client VPN, and from there we can actually start to give you an idea about how this things work in action. Okay. Alright, so this is my phone. Okay, actually before I do this, I want to go back to the diagram just to give you an idea what we've done so far. So on MX4, we said we actually expecting to get client VPN to connect to our network. What I'm trying to do here is to access from my phone from the internet to my MX to be able to kind of like say, yeah, I want to create a tunnel with you and then connect. I think the challenge that we're going to face now is IPs. I do have private IPs here, and this device needs public IP to talk to. So what we need to do is to have the gateway to do some sort of port forwarding, so when the traffic comes in, it will get forwarded to the specific ports. And basically the public IP that I have in my lab network is actually terminated to this device, the gateway. So what I need to do from the gateway, I go and say I need port to be forwarded when the traffic comes in to go to my MPLS IP address of the MX4, which is the one for Man United. So let's do this. So I go here back to my network. So this is the MX that I use as a gateway. So if I go here to port forwarding, it should be part of the firewall rules. Okay, as you can see here, I can do some port forwarding. So I will just attach 2 ports that I will need to make sure that we will get them forwarded. So here I will say this is Man U VPN. Now which ports I want to get forward? 400, and that's coming from any IP, and I will need also 4400, sorry, 4500. Okay, now I need to specify the IP address of my MX, the WAN IP address here. So I would just go back to my MX. Let's go and check what IP address being given on the WAN interface. So this is the IP address here. I'll just take a copy and then go and paste it here and here. Save. Okay, so what we've done, we've told our gateway, which has the public IP address, when you actually get a traffic on port 500 and 4500, you can actually pass it or forward it to this IP address, which is our MX that connected to, the MX4 that connected to the MPLS. All right, let's take a quick snapshot of my IP address that I have here, the public IP address that I should be using. So it's 122.202.8.153. Great. Now all what I need to do is go back to my mobile and start to configure the client VPN. So from here I'll go to VPN, and then I will need to add a new configuration. First thing, it's actually IP LTTP. Description, I'll say this is MX training. The IP address of the server, so be here 122.202.8.153. That's my server IP address. Secret is the IP address that we put in the MX, which was Meraki 1234. Now I need to put my username and password to be able to authenticate, so I'll just swipe here and write this down quickly. And I put the password. Okay, so I'm done with this. Now what I want to do is to try to connect and see if it's gonna actually connect or not. So as you can see from up there, it actually told me VPN next to the signal size. Now if you remember, we said we're gonna have 192.168.5.0/24. This is the subnet that we should get. So if I actually check the IP address that being given to me, just to be able to kind of like verify that I got the right IP address. So you can see here, IP address that being given to me is 192.168.5.122. So that means I'm connected to the MX that I have here, and this MX is the one released to me the IP address, which is 192.168.5. Any number /24. So as you can see, when actually did this exercise, we've done two things. So we get the client VPN established. In addition to, we've done some port forwarding to make sure that the traffic will get forwarded properly to the IP address, the local IP address, in case you have your MX with the private IP address. All right, great. So I'll just go and disable this. So turn it off, go back to normal. And now let's look into what we have next. So the last thing that we want to cover as part of this module here would be group policies. So all the things that we covered now is like the firewall rules. We talked about how to do something like content filtering. We talked to, even if you want to go and do some sort of like traffic shaping, which we will cover in details later. But let's say I don't want to block the traffic. I maybe want to limit the bandwidth to this traffic. So I can go here to the traffic shaping rules section and choose the category. Let's say backups. I don't want people to use a lot of my bandwidths while they do backups. So here I can go and say, yeah, I'm going to limit your bandwidth to something really low. And maybe do low priority as well. And the tagging, I will give it really low tagging. We'll talk about this when we get to the next module, how to actually use quality of service with MXs. But just to give you an idea about, you can do some rules here to limit bandwidths or mark the traffic to be a lower or higher priority. But this kind of like configuration, it get applied to the public or global policy, right? So this is anyone gonna connect through the MX will have this policy applied to them. So how about I want to actually limit this policy to a specific group of users or a specific VLAN. So that's where you can actually go here to the network wide and start to have group policies and apply these group policies to the users. So what I can do, I can create a dummy group policy here, say this is maybe for my guest, so I will name it just guest. And what I can do, I can actually schedule this. So I can say this is going to be only during business hours. After hours, I don't care. They get the public policy or global policy applied to them. Okay, part of this policy, do I want to limit the bandwidth per user basically, or leave it open? So you can go here and say, now ignore the bandwidths and just allow them unlimited. So if I have in the global policy a limited bandwidth, then I can go here and say ignore it. Or I can actually go here and say, no, I'm gonna actually use a different bandwidth limit for this group. Same thing with firewall rules. I can go here and say ignore all the firewall rules that we have applied in the global policy and apply these rules for this specific group. So for this group, maybe I'll just go and block anything related to sports, and instead of blocking YouTube, for example. And same thing here with traffic shaping. So instead of using a specific rules that we have in the global policy to be applied to this group, I can go here and have completely different policy applied to them. So completely different application to be limited. And then you guessed it, blocked websites, I can go here and either append, so say, whatever I have in the global policy, I need to add to this maybe anything related to drugs, or I can go and say override what I have in the global policy and basically have this new list here. And then of course you can do the URL patterns whitelist and block specific patterns based on your requirements here. Let's save it. So now I have this policy. I have to put something here, so I'll just get rid of it. I'll do the same thing here. Alright. Now I have a policy called guest, but this policy is hanging in the air now. It's not applied to anyone or anything. So what I need to do is either I go to my addressing in VLAN and go and say, okay, for the VLAN that I have here, VLAN 77, I want to apply to this VLAN a group policy. So I can say, okay, please apply guest group policy to this group or this VLAN, and I hit save. So if I do have multiple VLANs on this MX, then I can actually have multiple group policies applied per VLAN. Or the other option, of course, is to use Active Directory and let Active Directory map the groups. And we will do this in the next section because you can see from the diagram here that we have the Active Directory connected to the MPLS. So we need to do some tricks here to make it work properly. So that will be covered in the next section, how we can do group policies with Active Directories. So just keep in mind that you can do the group policies either attached to VLANs, or even I can go here to the client list and maybe add the group policy manually to my clients. So that, for example, here a client, and then I will try to add a group policy to that person. So here I'll say group policy guest to this specific client. Or as you can see that we can do it as well from the addressing in VLAN. So we apply this group policy to the whole VLAN, so anyone will connect to this VLAN will get the policy. And the third option is to do an integration with Active Directory, and then we basically have from the Active Directory the group policies to be mapped. And we will cover this when we get to the next section. So that actually gets us to the end of this module. So we talked about how we can use the MX to protect your network, so use it as a unified threat management. We've seen how to do the firewalling, how to configure the content filtering, antivirusing, anti-malware, how to apply group policy, how to use the client VPN, and how to do some port forwarding. In the next section, we're going to talk more about how to use the MX as a gateway and how to utilize the key features that we have there like SD-WAN and more. So stay tuned for that one.